So shall I read out those questions that I sent you? What exactly you want to do?
You can ask, just ask, and then we'll go impromptu.
Yeah. One sec. Let me pull up.
I've gone through the question, so
let me just ask that in order. So what I will be doing is I will actually edit out my own piece, because that's just the waste of time, right? It's only about you. I will put the question up in text, and then you speak. So, but for the purpose of this recording, I will ask you so that it becomes more natural for you rather than reading some text, right? So I will ask the first question. I will say, welcome, James. Thank you for taking the time. The Jackfruit man of...
Thank you, Sukumar.
Very excited about interviewing you for this digital transformation series. Let me ask my first question. Yeah, you had a successful career in Microsoft. I remember I've seen press articles where Ravi Venkatesan speaks highly of you. I think is former MD of Microsoft India. It's hard for me to understand how somebody with your tech background jumped into something like Jackfruit. Right? It felt like, what can possibly connect these two things? Right? When I first heard it, it's like, I can't believe that that's what you did. So usually when I see people make that kind of transition, right, something big happens in their life. Is that something like that happened?
Yeah, Sukumar, if you recall, in our professional life, we interacted each other in the context of the biggest software company, right? Now we are talking about the biggest fruit. That is the only thing which is common between the two. Okay, so it is the biggest. At least I went for the biggest one. Okay. So just to give you the context, as you mentioned about my life at Microsoft, and Ravi speaking highly about how I managed. In fact, Ravi was somebody who was almost blocking my journey back to my hometown and working from home. It was on a flight journey. When I told Ravi I'm moving to Kerala, I'll be operating from Kerala, he said, "What? You should be working close to my office. And how can you go and work from a village in Kerala?" So when he was about to nuke my plan of, 15-year plan of going back to my hometown and continue to work for the best company, I had to stop him from nuking that plan. So he gave me a 6 months window. I said, "Okay, look," and what I told him is that, Ravi, the opportunity to work for the best company in the world and live where you grew up only comes once in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you should try it. And then he said, "If you put it that way, then I have to say yes." So that's how he allowed me to work from home in Kerala and managing a national role at Microsoft. As you know, my role was to manage executive relationship with our clients. So the CIOs, the CFOs and CEOs. So which means I had to be in all metros where all the big companies were. So the amount of time I spent in Bangalore was limited compared to the time I had to spend in other countries, other cities as well. So it was practical for me to live close to an airport in Kochi than living in Koramangala in Bangalore, where it would take 90 minutes of commute to get to the airport.
I remember I met you in the Kochi airport.
Exactly. Correct. So that's how close I live, very close to the airport. So that journey of working from home for Microsoft from 1999, so from 2009 to 2012, that 4 years of working from home, that changed my work life, what I call work life resonance. I had the best professional performance. At the same time, I had the best personal life as well, going back to my roots and being in a village, what I call the contrast between a small fish in a small pond to a big fish in a big pond. That oscillation was what gave me work life resonance. So when Chris Kobalarsson found out that, okay, I was managing this role from a village in Kerala, he got curious and he said, okay, James, you must document this so that more youngsters will get the courage to move back to their hometown. This is pre-COVID days. Okay. So, and most youngsters are spending 90 minutes each way in traffic, right? So there must be a more productive way of managing them from small towns in India. Okay. So Chris asked me to document my experience. And that is when I took a year off from Microsoft in 2012. Took a year off from professional life altogether to write a book about my journey back to my hometown without compromising my career. And that was for Penguin. And that is God's own office, how one man worked for a global giant from a village in Kerala. Okay. So there was a personal reason for me to take that year off as well. My wife is a doctor and she was practicing in Europe and then trained in Europe and practicing in Europe and moved back with me to India. So for her to get registration in India took 5 years. And once she got the registration, so she was not working for 5 years. We had young kids, so she was staying at home and, while I was traveling. So it was time for her to get back to work. And if I continue to travel like that, she has to spend weekends and nights at work. So that would be difficult. So I thought it'll be a logical time for me to take a year off so that I'm with kids when she gets back to full-time work. And I could write the book as well. That is how the two came together, personal reason and this need to write a book. So I took in 2012, October 2nd, Gandhi Jayanti, I said, come home is what the original title of the book was supposed to be. So while writing the book, this is October 2nd, I was writing from the attic of my house. And from the attic, there was a big window. I could see the backyard. And in the backyard, I could see the jackfruit or the jackfruit tree. So October, it was a small fruit. And I kept on writing. And this is right in my line of sight. And by December 15th, it became a baby hippopotamus. A 15 kg monster, okay? And, that constant focus on something kind of prompted me to look at it more seriously. It's going to fall off. Okay. So there are a couple of, other elements which came in, it's not just that view. So I'll share, a couple of experiences and, what triggered my focus on that. So first was in New Orleans when I was at Informatica. I took clients for a dinner at the Bourbon Street in New Orleans. And that was over a dinner steak at the Pat O'Brien's restaurant. And Cajun is very popular as a cuisine of New Orleans. So we all went for a Cajun steak, okay, which is a meat dish. And while when the chef came to me, my wife being a doctor, she had always told me that, okay, if you're taking steak, make sure it is cooked, well cooked. If it is sushi, make sure it is well, the fish is cooked. Okay, so two kind of restrictions from my wife being a doctor, and when the chef came and asked me, James, how would you like your steak to be? I said it should be well done. And after the chef, he asked me, are you sure? I said yes. And once the chef left, my colleague Bennett asked me, James, if my dad was sitting on the table, he would ask you, why would you even eat it? So I didn't understand till the chef brought the steak. It was a piece of brick. It was so dry. So I had to get extra helping of gravy and mashed potato to soak it so that I can somehow swallow it. Okay. So while taking the mashed potato with extra gravy, I had to keep on asking for more. I started focusing on, because my dish was so bad, I started focusing on the mashed potato. And then somehow it occurred to me, look, what is this mashed potato? It's a glorified cousin of a Kerala dish, which is made of raw jackfruit. We make a jackfruit mash as a replacement to rice, like the tapioca meal, steam cooked with coconut and turmeric, and you have it with the side dish, like a gravy side dish. Okay, so I said this is a glorified cousin of what is known as chakapurukka in Kerala, which is the jackfruit meal, or it's like a khichdi, similar to the khichdi, or I call it between khichdi and bengan bharta. That's the consistency of the jackfruit meal of Kerala. Okay. So, but it just a thought at that moment. Okay, look, this is like that. Nobody ever bothered to promote the jackfruit meal of Kerala like mashed potato being served at a Michelin star restaurant in New Orleans, right? Then later on, when I moved back to India, so and Sukumar, you probably know, we all look at what is our next career, right? We all look at career progression, and when I moved back to India with the purpose of serving India, and one area of interest for me was to promote the startup ecosystem in India.
I see.
Okay, and there was a role at Microsoft I was very keen on, which is the Microsoft Incubator CEO role in Bangalore. So Microsoft was setting up an incubator in Bangalore to bring in startups, coach them, in 6 months help them to find business funding, mentors, or all of that. So with my relationship with the CXOs in India, it was easy for me to give them access to the major corporates. So someone like you, I would contact and introduce a client. You would give some serious thought. So I thought I did fit into that role very well. But towards the end, the last minute, I lost out. And I lost out for one gap in my profile. I had no startup experience. I was through and through a professional. I worked for large corporations like 3M, Ford, Microsoft, even in smaller companies like i2 and Informatica, but never started something on my own. But I never thought that is because we launched new products in all my roles, right? So a new business is like a startup inside a big corporation.
Sure.
But then during the interview panel, they said, James, even a failed experience is good enough. You don't know unless you go through the motion of starting a new product, getting a team, and also finding funding. All of that is a different experience than an experience of a professional in the corporate world. I was disappointed. Okay, so that also led to me taking a year off. And so while writing the book, so anyway, I have spare time now. Okay, so that was also in the back of my mind, that failed startup experience, which was missing in my CV. Okay, and then I grew up with jackfruit in my childhood in Kerala. And in fact, my maternal uncle used to say that if you have a jackfruit tree in your backyard, your life extends by 10 years. Okay, there is no good, there's no logical reason to it, but it's just a saying.
Just empirically, he figured it out.
Yeah. So if you ask me what is the rationale for it, it's a fibrous fruit. It's high in fiber. So in 3 months, the tradition in Kerala was to replace rice at least one meal for full 3 months because rice was expensive at the time. And this is available free in your backyard. So making this mash out of the unripe jackfruit, the raw jackfruit, as a main meal, the amount of fiber you get will be more than what you will get for, as a side dish in 3 meals. Okay, so you have a sudden increase in fiber, and that is a cleanser, what I call a bottle brush effect for your intestines. It's an absolute cleanser. So that could be the reason why the saying is there. Okay, so I always knew it is fibrous. That when we used to come back from US during holidays, we used to prefer, my wife and I used to prefer the jackfruit meal. So relatives would serve us the jackfruit meal, and we go back very light. And that is when it occurred to me that, okay, in the US, during holidays, in a post-holidays, what most people switch to is Caesar salad. So if they have overeaten during holidays, then they go through a phase of eating more salad. Okay, so as a penance, right? So
yeah.
So I felt that, okay, look, this jackfruit meal is the Caesar salad of Kerala.
I see.
Okay, so we knew that, okay, there is something good about this. Okay, because we went back light. Okay, unlike if you take tapioca, which is a tuber rich in starch, or rice, heavy, we go back stuffed. But with jackfruit meal, it was more lighter. Okay, so there are a couple of points which came together, and then I came back to India. I also look at how MNCs operate in India, and the biggest one which got my attention was McDonald's. And the most popular burger of McDonald's is the beef burger, which is a no-no in India. Right? And McDonald's India adapted to the vegetable burger. And that became the fastest growing burger in the McDonald's portfolio. Okay. So if McDonald's can do a vegetable burger, why not a jackfruit burger? Okay, and this is so what this happened because I had spare time, and I'm seeing this every day, right? So
and
I
you
then
are an
okay.
innovator, James. You are thinking creatively. You are looking at things.
I mean, I was looking at from a different lateral view, but I wouldn't call myself an innovator. I was just looking at it. This is going to go waste, and I had spare time, so I called a few chefs. One of them agreed to make a burger out of the raw jackfruit, not ripe jackfruit, raw jackfruit. So I took the fruit down. Half of it I took it home. Other half I gave it to the chef. So he kept it in the freezer for some time. Then he called me and said, James, I've made it. You can come and have a try. So we had the burger. It was a tight burger. So in fact, he used the seed crumbs, roasted seed crumbs instead of bread crumbs. And he made the raw jackfruit cooked to a consistency where it is more like meat. And with the seed crumbs, it had a good nutty feel as well. So it was a tight burger compared to the vegetable burger on which McDonald's serves, which is very mushy, which is very soft because aloo is supposed to.
Yeah.
It's okay. This is more closer to meat. Okay, so that is where it all started. Going after the jackfruit burger from the underutilized jackfruit of Kerala. But then I found a shrimp burger manufacturer. I went to his house, to his factory. I saw the entire line. Then I walked him through what I want to do with the jackfruit burger. Then he asked me, James, which country are you going to export this to? And I told him it's for India. He said, forget it. I'm not going to touch it. So his rationale was, if you export this to another country, the cold chain is well established in the Western world. Okay, in
We
India,
don't have any.
the cold chain. And he gave me one insight, which may not be true now. He said, look, India, because of the power fluctuation, a lot of freezers work on backup generator. And that is man operated. In the night, when the power goes down, there is nobody to turn on the generator. So the temperature inside the freezer goes up, and then next time morning they'll refreeze it again. So the food gets spoiled, and the manufacturer gets the blame. Okay, so if he is worried about his reputation, I'm more worried about my reputation. So I dropped the whole idea. So that was a disaster. So I stopped the idea of and my view was, burger. Eat. I mean, if jackfruit grows in India, it should be sold in India first, rather than exporting to another country. I mean, from a carbon footprint point of view, and that is when I came across freeze drying. Okay, as a way to keep it intact, but you don't need the cold chain. So freeze drying is you remove the water content. So you first freeze it, then dehydrate at below zero so that the cell structure remains the same. So the jackfruit bulb, what we call the flesh around the seed, remains as it is. It's like pasta in a pack. You add warm water, within minutes it will rehydrate, and you can make your burger. And then I took it back to the chef, and he said, it's not just burger, I can make everything with it. Because I can powder it, I can rehydrate to more like a Manchurian, which is katak. I can rehydrate some more. It becomes more like a mashed potato. I can add this to my lasagna, or if I crispy, katak, paste, and powder. So there are 4 variations they can do. So he said, okay, look this, and he made a galauti kebab with it. Okay, which is supposed to be mutton. So there are many things which you could do. So that is when I decided to launch.
But how did you get into freeze drying? I mean, you are not a technical food processing guy, and freeze drying, I don't believe, is done even in India, right?
It is done in India, but it's usually for export because it's an expensive way of dehydrating.
So how did you land into that idea?
Okay, so maybe I could. So if you could, so it made sense for jackfruit.
Okay. That part I get, James. But see, imagine something. For example, You are a software guy, I am a software guy. Freeze drying will be the last thing I will look up. So how did you go from here to freeze drying? That's my question.
Okay, so Sukumar, on that, there are two aspects to it. Okay, so this is, in fact, my friend, my roommate, and my classmate from engineering college, he gave me this perspective when so we did engineering, and then he was with Ashok Leyland, I was with 3M, and then we both were working on extreme problems to solve. One fine day, he said, James, 4 years in engineering, there's only one thing which we learned: a logical approach to solve a problem.
Okay. So you recognize that transportation is a problem.
So
preservation and transportation is a problem, so you come with freeze drying. Is that how
shelf life was my issue? Okay, cold chain was my issue. How do I make sure, because it's a highly perishable product?
Correct.
Okay, so I had to increase shelf life without the mess. Okay, so to cut and take jackfruit out, it's a messy affair. Okay, yeah. It takes 90 minutes and 4 hands to get from the whole jackfruit to the ready to cook version of the jackfruit pods or the bulb. Okay, that is how messy the processing of jackfruit is. Okay, that is part of the reason why.
And I remember you said it's like 80% of the fruit is like the packaging of the nature has produced so much packaging material.
Correct. So just to give you the math, a 5 kg fruit, if you cut it open, the edible portion is only 1 kg, 1 kilogram. Okay, and within that 1 kilogram, 80% is water. So you get 200 gram out. You start and you get 200 gram as the outcome after dehydration. So shrinking from 5 kg to 200 gram, anybody with supply chain background would know that is a significant saving.
Yeah,
and if you
dramatic,
can do that at the source itself, and I come from a supply chain background, so to me, that was a significant cost saving in transportation. And I get my shelf life too. So even though freeze drying is the most expensive way of preserving food, it made sense for jackfruit because of the 80% biomass waste which can be removed at the beginning, then another 80% of moisture which can be removed. And then you get a highly perishable product into 1 year shelf life. Okay, so that is why freeze dried made sense. But raw mango, it doesn't make sense because only the seed need to be removed. So you're better off keeping it as frozen. Okay, so here it made sense. So that is so. Then I took it back to the chefs. They loved it. So that is how it took off as a 5-star ready product. Okay, but then one led to the other. So that is how I arrived at freeze-dried jackfruit with a full year shelf life, 365 days shelf life. So from a seasonal product to a 365-day shelf life product, that is how I came up with Jackfruit 365 as the name.
Outstanding. And then you now shifted gears into it's a thing for diabetes. How did you make that connection?
Okay, so at this stage, I was just playing around with an idea. There was no context of getting into a business. Okay, so when once I understood that a freeze-dried product is loved by the chefs, I went to a food manufacturer in Kerala, Eastern condiments. I said, you have a lot of spices and a lot of vegetables you're doing, but how come you're not doing for the native fruit of Kerala, which is jackfruit? And I made a presentation with all the experiments I have done and the feedback I've got from the chefs. And the chairman of Eastern, Nawaz Miran, after 45 minutes of my pitch, he turned around and said, okay, James, for the last 45 minutes, I was not looking at the business case. I was looking at your passion for jackfruit. If you're serious about it, you should start it. If I give it to one of my employees, they will drop it at the first hurdle. Unless the person with the passion is behind it, ideas won't materialize into sustainable business. If you're serious about it, you should start it. And it came as a ton of bricks on my head. Because here I was promoting startup ecosystem in India. When it is my opportunity to start something on my own, I was chickening out. Okay. And then this, the failed startup experience why I lost that role at Microsoft also came together. I took the plunge. That is when I decided to start a venture of my own. So that is my entry into startup. Okay, but because of my contrast, as you started off this call, that how can somebody leave Microsoft for Jackfruit? That got everyone's interest.
Attention.
Even though I had told every journalist who interviewed me that, okay, I did not leave Microsoft for Jackfruit. I left for the book, and that led to Jackfruit. They will always write that, okay, James left Microsoft for Jackfruit. Okay, that is the story element. So, Economic Times journalist Ulek found out about it. And then he wrote a story on Economic Times. It became a cover story, and it was James and the Jackfruit Factory. Okay. Then one led to the other, and it's just media took it of serious interest that, okay, so they all, if somebody has to leave Microsoft for Jackfruit, there must be something big about Jackfruit, right? That is how it was perceived. And it led to a Sunday supplement in the largest newspaper in Kerala, Malayalam Manorama, and that is reaching almost 50%, more than 50% of household in Kerala. Okay, that so with all this news coverage, what happened was anybody with some knowledge about Jackfruit tried to reach out to me, and one of them happened in 2014 April. Okay, a priest came to me and asked, is it possible that the unripe jackfruit, the raw jackfruit, has insulin in it? I said, Father, I have heard all kinds of stories, but this is the wackiest of all. There's no way. But then he said, okay, then explain to me. I'm taking insulin for 5 years. And the doctor told me not to take jackfruit when I'm on insulin. But one night, a month ago, one of my friends who is also a priest came back from Maharashtra to meet me. And he specifically asked for the Kerala jackfruit meal for dinner. And for him, the nuns prepared the jackfruit meal, and then we both had jackfruit meal for dinner. And usually I take my insulin right after, but because he was there, I was still chatting with him. Then after my friend left, I went to my room, took my normal dose of insulin. And he said, I collapsed right there. He just fell down onto the floor. And he said, I did not even have the energy to get up. And he said, 5 years ago, when the doctor gave me the insulin, he asked me to keep a packet of sugar next to my bedside table in case if my sugar level goes up. I never had to use it. But I somehow was able to reach out my hand and get the packet of sugar, put that in my mouth, and I was lying on the floor for 2 hours. I got the energy to get up after 2 hours. I checked my sugar level, it was 50. It's supposed to be above 100. So it was hypoglycemic. Okay. So 2 weeks later, he had the jackfruit meal again. He reduced his insulin by half. Even then, by 2 a.m., he started feeling hypoglycemic. Not as severe as the last time. I have no idea. I'm never going to touch this again in my life. I got shit scared because I was selling the freeze-dried jackfruit online. So I was worried that if somebody takes it and dies, I'm liable. Okay, so that is what led to my research on is this good for diabetes, is it bad for diabetes, is it risky? So that is what led to my scientific research. And from there, I moved into a full-time scientific researcher into diabetes.
You published papers and all that now. Yeah.
So looking back now, I have several published papers. I'm an invited speaker at many scientific forums. In fact, the latest one in June last year, I presented a randomized controlled trial on type 2 diabetes patients using Jackfruit 365. A randomized controlled trial, the way medicine is tested, and proved that 3 tablespoons of jackfruit flour per day can reduce HbA1c in 3 months. That was accepted at the American Diabetes Association's annual conference in Chicago last year. And that paper is now published in the journal Diabetes of American Diabetes Association. So we were able to clinically prove, and in a randomized controlled trial, the best design to prove medicines, that this is actually good for diabetes. So from that one conversation with that priest about that hypoglycemic event, in 6 years, I have clinically proved there is a scientific reason why this happened. Okay.
So what is the mechanism underneath it, James? It cannot be insulin, right? It controls.
It is not insulin. It is not insulin. It is called fundamental medical nutrition therapy. Okay. So just to cut short, just to summarize what we have learned, there are 5 reasons why it works. Okay. First, a cup to cup, 1 cup of rice with 1 cup of raw jackfruit, there's a 40% reduction in carbohydrate, which is what doctors ask you to do. Reduce your carbohydrate. It's a 40% reduction in calorie. Okay, doctors ask you to reduce your calories, go for more volumetric diet. So this is 40% low in calorie, and it has got 40% lower in glycemic load. So I then sent the raw jackfruit in freeze-dried form to Sydney University to conduct the glycemic study. That is where the world's best in glycemic research. And they proved that, okay, the unripe jackfruit versus rice is 40% low in glycemic load, which is the sugar level increase in your body in 2 hours. So this priest had 40% less increase in blood sugar, but he took his normal dose of insulin as rice. So it became 40% excess. Okay, that is what brought his sugar level too low. Okay, and then fiber. Okay, in Jackfruit 365, and I'll also talk about the flour which we made. It has 4 times more fiber than rice. Okay, and fiber is good for a diabetic person. And finally, the last one saved me 2 crores, which is the Malayalam word for the raw jackfruit is chakka.
Chakka, yeah.
In Tamil, it's palakai. Okay, and in Kannada, it is halsinakai. And Telugu, it's panasakai. Okay, and the word ka, whereas in English, you only have 1 word for all 3 forms of jackfruit. Tender jackfruit, raw jackfruit, and ripe jackfruit, you call all of them jackfruit. Okay, so in our languages, Indian language, there are 3 different names for this. Okay, so it's idichakka, which is the tender jackfruit, chakka, which is the raw jackfruit, then chakka palam, or palapalam, which is for the ripe jackfruit. So chakka, the word ka, the correct English meaning is green fruit. Okay, it is a raw fruit. It is not ripe fruit. Okay, it's a vegetable. All ka is a vegetable. So finally, I had to go to the Malayalam University Vice Chancellor and get it documented that ka is a vegetable, not a fruit. So chakka is a vegetable. Okay, so what do doctors ask you to do? Reduce your rice and increase your vegetables. Okay, so technically it's a salad. So when you increase your chakka, which is the raw jackfruit, you're actually increasing your vegetable intake and reducing your rice intake, which is what the American Diabetes Association recommend you to do. Reduce rice and wheat, increase salad, or increase greens. So 5 reasons: 40% low in carbohydrate, 40% low in calorie, 40% low in glycemic load, 4 times more fiber, and you're replacing a refined carb or a simple grain with a green, a vegetable. So it's 5 fundamental reasons why replacing rice or wheat with the unripe or the raw jackfruit is good for diabetes. Is that clear?
Yeah. What is the 2 crore thing?
So to prove that if it was not a fruit, if it was a fruit, to prove that it is good for diabetes, I would have had to do a 3-year study on 200 diabetic patients to prove that it is good for diabetes. Because it was a green, it's a vegetable, it fits with the fundamental medical nutrition therapy guidelines of American Diabetes Association standards of care. So it was, once you know it is a vegetable, then it is within the guideline. Okay, so the only reason I did the randomized controlled trial was to make a claim on the product. You had to test it on diabetic patients and then have the results documented. Okay, then the regulations allow you to make a claim or to communicate with the consumers that this actually helps control blood sugar. So that is why I did the study. Okay, so that the largest study was negated by getting that documented from the Malayalam University Vice Chancellor that chakka is not a fruit, it is a vegetable.
So do you have no FDA approval for your thing?
So FDA approval is usually required for medicines. Okay, so this is a food.
It's a naturally occurring food. So
correct. Or if you're making a product which never existed, so let's say you're creating a new formula, okay, then you need to get FDA approval to make sure it is safe for patients to take it. Okay, the safety has to be proven first. So for example, like we saw the vaccine example, that most drugs or most manufactured product, you spend a lot more money in proving it is safe to consume. Okay, so a diabetic drug, before it gets to the first patient for clinical trial, you spend almost $1 billion to prove that there is no other side effect. Here it is a time-tested food and a single ingredient. So now I'll come to the invention part of it. So the book got published and the first copy went to Dr. Kalam.
Oh.
And he called me for a meeting because this conversation about me starting Jackfruit with that conversation with Nawaz Mir and Afistan was captured towards the end of the book. And he was, at the time, Dr. Kalam was campaigning for, he's saying Indian youth must now focus on agriculture revolution the way we have done IT revolution. Then only India can feed its growth. Okay, and here is somebody who has left the IT world for something to do with agriculture. So he got curious. So he wanted to know why I'm focusing on Jackfruit now. So Dr. Kalam called me for a meeting in Delhi. And during that meeting, I walked him through what I have uncovered for diabetes. And he went through the data and he was silent for 3 minutes. And then I told him, Dr. Kalam, I'm not getting enough traction with doctors to pursue this. And he said, James, you're wasting your time with doctors. This is not medicine. This is pure science. This is absolute science. He said a high fiber meal always translates to low absorption of sugar.
Correct.
Because it travels through your intestine faster. The capillary action is faster when you have more fiber. So your intestine doesn't get enough time to absorb all the sugar from the food. That is known. Okay, that's pure science. But there's only one thing new here. It's possible to eat an unripe fruit as a meal. Most fruits, when they're not ripe, the acidity is very high. Look at mango. Look at apple. You can't even have a sabji out of it because the acidity is so high that your body will reject. But the jackfruit, when it is not ripe, the acidity is very low. That is why you're able to take it as a whole meal. Okay, that is what is unique about this fruit. That only in Kerala has this custom. But James, remember one thing. Changing eating habits is worse than changing religion. So you must find a way to add this to what people normally eat. Okay, and reduce rice and wheat. You're an engineer, you go figure that out. Once you crack that, you call me. I will campaign across India for you. You don't need to do any study. That was a big ask. It took me 18 months. He said, there's a diabetes express running in this country. Don't worry about seasonality. When it is not available, we will import from Brazil. They have the opposite season. They also have a lot of jackfruit. So that is the ask which he gave me. And I'm now on my 7th year to fulfill that ask. Okay.
But you figured out that you could add it to chapati.
Correct.
Idli, all that.
Yeah. So I was looking at the way India introduced iodized salt. When there was an iodine deficiency, by adding iodine into salt, it reached every Indian. So if I use the same analogy, if I can add jackfruit into roti and idli, it will reach every Indian.
Can you not convince like an ID or ITC to add this to their flour that they sell?
We will get there.
Well, ID is a Kerala man. No, you should be able to speak
correct. So we have. We will get there. Okay. So first we are proving. People do it yourself. So you add it yourself. Then we will give you pre-added. Okay. So right now what we have done is so then the idea of the flour came in. Okay, if I can make a flour out of it, I call it a flour, not a powder. Okay, because what makes the difference between a vegetable powder and a flour is the binding factor. So if it doesn't bind, so for example, when you mix
So
the
it has
jackfruit,
gluten, is it? How does it bind?
it has a soluble fiber which is natural in jackfruit called pectin.
Oh, pectin. Okay.
Okay, so pectin is what the jam makers use to convert
Yeah.
juice to jam. So it's a gelatin agent.
It's a fruit. Yeah.
Yeah. So so we use the pectin of jackfruit itself. So we have a single ingredient. It is all coming from jackfruit, but we have a standardized product. Okay, with the binding factor between rice flour and wheat flour. That is my invention. I made a jackfruit flour with the binding factor between rice flour and wheat flour, which is rich in protein and has significant amount of fiber and low in carbohydrate, low in calorie. And that is what we have cracked. And no change in taste or texture when you add this to your roti, when you add this to your dosa. Okay, so when you add, the clinical study which we did was you add 1 tablespoon per meal 3 times a day. Okay, and if you do that by replacing an equal volume, so what you do is that you take 1 tablespoon of jackfruit sugar flour into a cup, add the balance atta. Okay, and you make a normal roti. When you take 3 fulka, the third fulka is jackfruit. You add 1 tablespoon into the bowl and then add the rest of idli dosa batter. And when you make 3 idlis, the third idli is made from jackfruit. It's a vegetable. Okay, but you still continue to eat your 3 fulka and 3 idli. But you are technically eating only 2 and a vegetable. Okay,
so you
and that
cut
is
the
what
one third. You cut the carb.
correct, and that is, and you just need to add. In fact, there was a family in Delhi. They have 11. It's a joint family, 11 people diabetic. The servant will put 11 spoons of jackfruit flour first, and the balance atta. Simple as that. Just 1 spoon per meal. Okay, 3
So you're
times a
able
day.
to manufacture enough jackfruit with all this growing demand that you created.
We're setting up a second factory now. We
Wow.
have reached the capacity of the first factory. Setting up the second factory, so it's growing very well. In fact, we are looking at multiple factories across India because diabetes, the population is so high.
Is it grown everywhere in India, jackfruit?
It's from the western Ghat, from from the southwest of Kerala to northeast Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh. It's available across India. Jackfruit is all over India, but the best quality and the best quantity comes from Kerala. But it's available in West Bengal, Orissa, Chhattisgarh, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, Konkan Belt, Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, they belt. Yeah.
So you're teaching this to the Brazilians also, is it? So you
We're
mentioned Brazil somewhere.
We're looking at how can we source from Brazil when it is not available in India. There are seasons when
So you
it's
have
not
a
available.
patent for your product? Is it like?
Yeah, so there are 2 patents involved. One is the product, which is the product process and the application to control blood sugar. That is the patent which is awarded. We got it in July last year. And then second is jackfruit is a beast to process. Okay, and it's labor intensive. So when we started off, 1 kg was 2,000 rupees per kilo. Now it is 600 rupees per kilo. That is through mechanization. Okay, and second, the sugar level goes up very high. So unless you have a fast processing process, the sugar value goes up, which is very critical for the glycemic control which we're after. So I had to design and develop a machine to process continuous process of jackfruit. That is the second patent which we have. That brought down the cost. That is what made it affordable. Okay, so first was the branding, which is the 5-star journey was aspirational. So we changed the perception about jackfruit with that. In fact, Kerala government declared jackfruit as a state fruit of Kerala subsequently. Okay, so we changed the perspective of jackfruit. Second, we made it healthy. we proved that, okay, it is good for diabetes. Third, we made it affordable. That's what we call from IA jackfruit to AHA jackfruit.
Nice, very nice. One second, I'm just pulling up the other questions to see if anything we missed.
How is it going so far? You got 15 minutes more? Okay.
Yeah. I think you have already answered all the questions.
So you may want to ask, one question around, because this is for professionals. How can traveling people consume jackfruit flour? Or I can mention that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, and Sukumar, what I found recently is that most of my former professional colleagues who are on LinkedIn, now they start commenting that, okay, I have the pack on my table or on my kitchen, in my kitchen, right? So what we found was those who are professionals who are traveling, when you're at home, especially the COVID situation, the food is prepared at home. It's easy for people to add. And most of us, in fact, you probably know in the IT world, we don't get enough time to move around. We sit in front of and stress levels are high. So diabetes is a major concern within the working professionals, what I call the professional Bharatis of India. Okay. So how do you consume? In fact, one is when food is prepared at home, you can add this to your dosa or roti when you prepare at home. While you're on the move, when you're traveling, you can add 1 tablespoon to buttermilk, yogurt, or soup, or even oats. When you're at the hotel, you can actually add this and then have that first before your meal. So the way it works, the pectin stays in your stomach longer. Okay, so it keeps you full for longer. So it gives you higher satiety. Okay, so you in your subconscious, you will gradually reduce your meal portion. But you're happy because you're not hungry, right? So there will be an overall reduction in calorie. So when food is prepared at home, you add it at the time of preparation, or you mix it with yogurt, soup, or porridge when you're traveling, and then just have it before your meal. That is a great way of ensuring that, okay, you get 3 tablespoons per day. And it's not just for people who are diabetic. These are fundamental, okay? I mean, the root cause for many of our non-communicable diseases, energy density from refined carbohydrates, which is rice and wheat. And we don't eat enough vegetables and fruits. This is a vegetable in powder form, which you can add to anything which you eat. So, I mean, 1 spoon of jackfruit resistive flour has more soluble fiber than 1 whole apple. Okay, an apple a day keeps the doctor away is because of the pectin in the apple. Okay, that is on the skin of the apple is where the pectin is. Okay,
I think many people remove the skin also.
Remove the skin also, right? So you lose the whole thing, right? So here, and pectin is what protects the skin from permeating insects as well as water from entering into the fruit. Okay, so that pectin is available in the jackfruit flour. So 1 spoon is equivalent to 1 whole apple per day. When you take 3 tablespoons, you keep 3 doctors away.
Very nice. So what is next for you? In the next 10 years, what is your plan? How do you think about the next 10 years?
Sukumar, even though I mentioned to you about my own startup, failed startup experience, and so it came from a powerful ask from Dr. Kalam. Okay, and I came back to India to make an impact in a large number of people's lives. Okay, that was a rationale for me to come back to India. Okay, and in fact, I wanted to go work for Gates Foundation. And then Ravi Venkatesan, in fact, since you mentioned, he gave me a tip. He said, James, charity is only a band-aid to the problem. It is sound business which has a bigger impact on people's lives than charity. And he's giving the examples of motorcycles. When the government had no money to put roads into your houses, motorcycles allowed people to move faster. And when the cell phones, okay, even a carpenter and a auto rickshaw driver is able to get more per day because of the cell phone. Okay, and these are not charitable. It is the consumer who has got the benefit, who has funded the business. The sound business has a bigger impact on people's lives than charity. Okay, that changed my perspective about business versus charitable cause. Okay, so now what I look at, what Dr. Kalam asked me was, reverse India's diabetes express. Okay, put that in reverse gear. And for that to happen, every meal should have 1 spoon of jackfruit flour. Okay, how can that happen? Okay, and my mission is to promote this through every public health center in India. There are 17,000 PHCs across India, and today when you go there, you can see the polio vaccine poster there.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to see a poster saying diabetes ko roko, ek chamach katal ki aata daalo. That campaign has to go across India, pan India. So we have made a big impact in Kerala. Okay, every kirana shop in Kerala is selling jackfruit flour or fresh jackfruit. Okay, every vegetable shop is selling fresh jackfruit now, which nobody wanted at the time. Okay, every kirana shop is selling jackfruit 365. Like that, I want every kirana shop in India to have jackfruit flour. We have to source every jackfruit in India and even import jackfruit from outside India to reverse India's diabetes express. So that is a long-term mission for me. It is a sound business idea with a larger cause. So we want a lot of partners to join us and then scale it up across India and then look beyond India.
Nice. Very inspiring.
Thank you so much.
I think you answered all my questions. It's fantastic. What can I say? Amazing.
Do you remember our meeting in Kochi, and then from there
Yeah, we have met. Me and my wife met with you
Correct.
once. Then
Correct,
you and
correct.
I had dinner in the Kochi airport.
And your wife made that fantastic dish,
Yeah.
which is and
With the
especially the
jackfruit,
picture with the mullapu, that's the jasmine.
yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic picture. So from there, that time I was focused on the freeze dried. Then the diabetes angle came in. That is when it became serious.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this is a fantastic find that it controls diabetes, which is probably the biggest scourge of humanity, not just India.
Yes, yes, and
worldwide, it's a problem.
And COVID made it worse.
Yeah. So, do you have from what I understand, Jackfruit 365 is still a kind of a small business, right? Are the big companies like Tata's and people like that supporting you?
So what we did was, we found someone who understood, who's got the passion for jackfruit. So the largest spices company in Kerala is the first partner whom I've got. Okay.
That is Eastern Condiments.
Eastern Condiments. Okay. So they're the largest spices exporter. So that helped me to establish ourselves in Kerala very well. The land of jackfruit, we have established ourselves. Now we are looking at beyond Kerala. So that is when we will need larger partners. In terms of our roadmap, we can scale it up on our own.
So you're like funded, is it like bootstrapped? What is your funding?
We're well funded. Okay, because we have decided to go with a strategic partnership. Okay, so that has helped me to
venture scale. Capital people have put in money, or this is different?
No. So this is through companies with a strategic interest. So let me take the example of Eastern. Eastern does the distribution and manufacturing for us. Okay, so they are we have investment as well as incubation from a large company. Okay, so to give you an example, when my 2 minutes interaction with Prime Minister, that video went viral. Overnight, my demand went up by 10 times. No startups can match that, right? No startup can scale up operations to capture that demand. Because I have a partner who is working on large volumes, overnight I could move goods by air and serve. Okay, and we kept all those demand for 2 months. I was working hand to mouth. Okay, whatever I could produce, they'll be able to deliver it in the hands of customers. Okay, and in parallel, we scaled up production as well, setting up a next factory now. Okay, so that is, I mean, again, Sukumar, this comes from our global exposure. Okay, so to me, I look at my strength and weaknesses, and I'm more aware of my weakness. Okay, I realized the operational scale will be my weakness because this is not an area of expertise for me, right? I've never worked in food. Okay, so you need somebody with their expertise and the ability to scale. Okay, so I always believed in excess capacity better than capital. This answers your question, why not venture capitalist? Money is not enough.
Expertise. Yeah.
Expertise. Yeah. So I took that call. Okay, if it was software, if it was automotive, I would have done differently. But that also shows it's possible for us to branch into areas where we have no expertise, as long as we can find the right partner.
As well as you have a brilliant idea, no? So there is
exactly.
power of innovation.
I mean, idea would have sat on my shelf if I didn't have a good partner and the expertise to convert that idea to even to get this back in the hands of tens of thousands of people across India. It's not easy.
Yeah, and you use e-commerce, the latest digital channels.
Correct. So that is where my expertise came from, the digital world, right? So I took online first. In fact, the scale happened because of online.
But I don't see any Facebook ads for Jackfruit. How are you doing your marketing?
Not required.
It sells itself.
Because I mean, to be honest, our biggest communication happens through WhatsApp.
So you send blast messages through WhatsApp, is it? What?
No, I just go speak. And then others write about me. I mean, it's because the idea is, Sukumar, in storytelling, there are, I talk about 3 Ds, which is a dialogue, detail, and drama. Okay, so with the Jackfruit story, all 3 was there. Okay, so the priest having a hypoglycemic incident, my conversation with the priest, then the scientific research, which is the detail, then the priest now, he's actually now out of insulin completely. Okay, so dramatic results. Okay, then there are 2 other elements. Diabetes is a major cause.
Yeah.
Right. So, and wastage of jackfruit is a major farmer's cause. So you have 2 major costs coming together. Okay, that's the first. So that is why it is.
So you don't have to technically spend on marketing. It just PR. It's more PR rather than marketing.
Yeah, 2 groups of people, right? The patient and the farmer. They both has an incentive to promote the story. So in fact, in Amazon, we are the most gifted grocery item.
I see.
So when a diabetic patient tries it for herself or himself, they see the result, they buy it as a gift to 10 people.
Do people from abroad buy this?
Yes. Okay, so they order it online from Amazon to their relative in India, and the relative then sends it by courier.
By courier, okay.
We are in Middle East. I mean, we are in Dubai. All the Middle East countries we are there. India we are there, but not in the Western countries. We need to focus on India first.
There's a huge demand here with 1.3 billion people.
Correct. And with close to 10 crores of diabetic population by 2030. So, yeah. I mean, India will remain my first and best market.
It's fantastic, James. We run out of time. I think it's so inspiring as always. Your enthusiasm and passion is infectious. What can I say? Thank you.
All the best with your program as well. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you so
I will edit it and I will run it by you before I publish it.
Sure, okay.
Thanks.
Okay, bye, Sumar. Okay.